off page 109 with Beowulf telling Hrothgar, beginning of fit 26, that if you ever need any help, I'll come. I'll bring 1,000 things. If Hrethric wants, ever needs advice, he knows where to send word. And Hrothgar, where we left off, Hrothgar said, Helak ever dies, I'm sure they're going to elect you king. You'll be a good king, etc. Yeah, a little bit. So, we get 1866 and following. Hrothgar gives them a bunch of treasure. Beowulf and his men leave. They go back to their boat. Beowulf gives the Coast Guard, the guy who first welcomed them, a piece of treasure so that whenever he sits at the hall table, everybody else is like, wow, that's a great piece of treasure and such. And very, very quickly, they make their way back to the land of the Geats. Okay? 1925. Building was splendid, the king quite bold, high in his hall, hid Helak's wife, very young, and we get this little, it's called a digression. The poem is full of what are called episodes and digressions. Digressions are really just shorter episodes, like the Finnsburg episode. That's a pretty long passage. But then you get these little brief things where, the poet seemingly has his eye on a destination, and it's like, oh, look, a bunny, and goes off after the bunny for a moment, and then comes back. It used to be thought that these episodes and digressions didn't have much to do with the overall main idea of the poem. That's not as much thought anymore. I never really thought that was the case.
Did you ever play the game?
So, I want to pick up with Fit 28. And Beowulf goes back to Helak, and we're told 1966. They had survived their journey, went boldly to where they knew the protector of earls, slayer of Onyenthal, lay. Where he gave out rings. Well, who's the slayer of Onyenthal? And why do they call him the slayer of Onyenthal and not just Helak? Well, the reason within the line is metrical and alliterative. The poet needs the line to alliterate, not with a for Helak, but with the word, which is slayon, for Onyenthal. Okay? The good young battle king. This is like the second or third time that the poet has emphasized that Helak is young. But who's Onyenthal? Swedish king. He has two sons, Othra and Onela. Othra has two sons, Anmund and Eadgils. Onela doesn't have any sons. Remember, at the beginning of the poem, Onela is the one who marries the daughter named ? The daughter is the fourth child of, we're told, Halfdane. Okay? She is Hrothgar's sister. All right? It's going to get really confusing. So, Helak hears that Beowulf's come. He quickly commands the hall to be cleared. Beowulf comes in, and we're told 1987. How did you fare, beloved Beowulf, in your sea journey when you suddenly resolved to seek a far-off strife over the salt sea, a battle in Herat? Did you better at all the well-known woe of Hrothgar, the famous prince? For that I seethed with heart care and distress, mistrusted the adventure of my beloved man. Long I implored that you not seek that slaughter spirit at all. Well, when Beowulf arrived at the land of the Geats, he told Hrothgar that all the men of the Geats did what? That they encouraged him to go. And here, ENGL tells us, I didn't want you to go. Now, both those statements can't be true. So somebody's fibbing a little bit. Question is, who? So, he says, I long implore that you not seek that slaughter spirit at all. Let the South Danes make themselves war against Grendel. Well, what might be one reason why ENGL would tell Beowulf, let the South Danes fight their own battles?
Cold War.
Yeah, because they were in open hostility before Beowulf arrived. So, Beowulf says, it's no mystery to many men, the great meeting, and he retells what happened. Okay. He says, I came there. Once he knew of my intentions, he assigned me a seat with his own sons. The troop, 2014, the troop was in delight. Never have I seen among hall sitters under heaven's vault a more joyous feast. The famous queen, Wealhtheow, came among us, passed out drinks, etc., etc. And then he mentioned something we did not see or experience before. Line 2022. Freywaru, the daughter of Hrothgar, I heard the man in the hall call her, she did what? She passed among the hall thanes, and she also bore the treasure cup. And then he tells us a story. She is promised, young, gold adorned, to the gracious son of Froda. This is ENGL, prince of the Heathobards. Heathobards were mentioned earlier in the poem in a footnote. Why? Because the poet alludes to the burning of Heorot, and alludes to that in the sense, or in the context of civil war between fathers and sons-in-law. Okay? Well, ENGL will be Hrothgar's son-in-law. The ruler of the Scyldings has arranged this. The kingdom shepherd approves the council that he might settle his share of feud and slaughter with this young woman. And then Beowulf adds, but seldom anywhere after the death of a prince does the deadly spear rest for even a brief while, though the bride be good. In other words, she could be the best woman in the world. That's not going to cause the hatred to end. And he says, it may perhaps. This might be what happens in the future. And he tells a story. What's the story? It's very similar to the Finnsburg episode. Okay? Freywaru will go live with ENGL, and she will bring with her her own band of retainers. Okay? And sometime, following her across the floor, will go, line 2035, a noble son of the Danes, received with honors. On him glitters an ancestral heirloom, hard, ring-adorned, once a Heathobard treasure, as long as they were able to wield weapons. That is, in the hall of the Heathobards, following Freywaru, will go a young Danish warrior wearing some dead Heathobards' armor. Okay? Because the guy who used to wear it is dead. Until in that deadly shield play they undid their blooded comrades and their own lives. Then an old spear bearer speaks over his bier. This is an old Heathobardish warrior who's going to be sitting probably somewhere in the back of the hall. He's going to lean next to a young warrior sitting next to him. And he will remember all the spear deaths of men. Why? Because this old warrior will be one who is present when the warrior who used to wear that armor was killed. And he's going to say to the son of that dead warrior, you, my friend, recognize that sword which your father bore into battle. Why is he doing this?
Make him angry?
Yeah. You see that? You see what that dirty SOB Dane is doing? He's wearing your daddy's armor. That's your daddy's sword. And the implication is always, when you have that kind of language, and before that was your daddy's sword, it was his daddy's sword. And it was his daddy's sword. In other words, it's family heirloom. And look at him, strutting there, cock of the walk. You gonna let him do that? Now here's some son or other of his slayer, walks across this floor, struts in his finery, brags of the murder, bears that treasure which ought to belong to you. He urges and reminds him. Notice, on every occasion, this isn't a one-time affair. It's like that young Danish stud walks across there every night, and the old guy's going, he's doing it again. He is flipping the bird at you. You gotta let him do that. I mean, this is a warrior society. This is an honor code. Until finally, the time comes that Freyreu's Thane, for his father's deeds, sleeps bloodstained from the bite of a sword, forfeits his life. From there, the other escapes his life. Why? Because he knows the land. The young Heathobard warrior knows exactly where to go, where the Danes won't be able to find him. And then what happens? Boom! Why? Go back to Finnsburg. Finn's men attack the Danes, who are guests. ENGL's men attack the Danes, who are guests. Violates the law of hospitality. So when the law of hospitality is violated on the one side, then the other side, anything goes. Thus I expect that the Heathobard's part in the Danish alliance is not without deceit, nor their friendship fast. He says, oh, that. I was talking about Grendel. I got sidetracked. Sorry, episode. Let me get back, digression. Let me get back to this. So he talks about Grendel and what happened to Honshu there. It's the first time this guy's named. The attack came first against Honshu there, 2076. Deadly to that doomed man. He fell first, a girded champion. Grendel was a famous young retainer's devourer, gobbled up the body of that beloved man. Grendel glabbed him, and he meant to leave that gold hall empty-handed, but in his mighty strength he tested me, grabbed with a ready hand. 2085. A glove hung, huge, grotesque, fast with cunning clasps. It was all embroidered with evil skill, with the devil's craft and dragon skins. Okay? So Grendel doesn't arrive there naked and stuff. He comes, and he's got a big old bag that he's carrying to stuff people parts into, probably, you know. So he wanted to put me inside it, but he said no. So he killed Grendel. I'm going to skip a bunch. And killed Grendel's mother. Ashura died. Hrothgar gave me a whole bunch of stuff. Fit 31. So that nation's king followed good customs. How? How did he follow good customs? Look at all the stuff he gave me. And so Beowulf had all the treasure brought in. Okay? And then he says, oddly, 2150, I have few close kinsmen, my Helak, except for you. What does he mean by few close kinsmen? 0. Helak is his only kinsman. Okay? How is he kin to Beowulf?
He's his uncle.
He's his uncle. His mother's brother. Okay? Beowulf's mother was Helak's sister. So he brings on all the stuff. And he says, you know, Hrothgar gave me this battle gear. It belonged to his older brother before it belonged to him. Right? Use it well. And then the poet says, and he brings in horses, etc., etc. And then 2173, the ring, the neck ring that Wealthy had given him, he gives it. And we get to 2177. So the son of Ecgtheow showed himself brave, renowned for battle and noble deeds, pursued honor, by no means slew drunken his hearth companions. Why in the world would you say that when you're praising Beowulf? Oh, by the way, he didn't kill anybody who sat at the table with him.
Because this whole book has had a theme of kinslaying.
Okay, because kinslaying is important in the tale. What else?
Hospitality.
Partly. What else? What's one of the things that was said about Hermod, the quintessential bad king? He did slay his hearth companions. Okay? We also know you get a bunch of German warriors into a room around a table, give them a bunch of beer, and what happens?
They get drunk.
Fights break out. Okay? Yeah, they get drunk. Fights break out. We know this from other Germanic sources. Many Germanic sources have this occur. Okay? Here we're being told Beowulf's not like all these other warriors. He had no savage heart, but the great gift which God had given him, the greatest might of all mankind, he held brave in battle. Beowulf uses his strength solely in battle. Because if he did slay his hearth companions, if he did get drunk at the table, would anybody else have a chance? No, they wouldn't. Okay? And then the poet says this, 2183. He had been long despised, as the sons of the Geats considered him no good, nor did the lord of the waiters wish to bestow many things upon him on the mead benches, for they assumed that he was slothful, a cowardly nobleman. Long when? In his youth? Could this be the reason why Beowulf and Breca challenge each other to the swimming contest? Does Beowulf have something to prove to other people? Because people are saying, what a loser. You'll never amount to anything. Oh, yeah? And so he, arms up. It's interesting because this is the only time in the poem where this idea is mentioned. All right? Reversal came to the glorious man for all his griefs. What griefs? That nobody thought he was ever going to amount to anything. And now people praise him far and wide as what? The best king ever. Or he will be the best king ever. So, Helak, 2190, orders the heirloom of Hrethel to be brought in, adorned with gold, and he gives Beowulf treasure. Why? Good king. Helak is bestowing treasure on Beowulf because Beowulf brought glory to Helak, not to himself. I mean, yeah, he did the deed against Grendel, but when Beowulf goes and fights somebody else, that glory goes to Helak. Just like you, if you have a job, you do a really good thing on your job, that looks good on your immediate supervisor. Similarly, or alternatively, you screw up badly, that looks bad on your supervisor. Okay? So, 2200. Look how quickly this happens. Then it came to pass amid the crash of battle in later days, after Helak lay dead, and for Hardred the swords of battle held, deadly slaughter under the shield wall, when the battle shovings sought him out, those hardy soldiers, and savagely struck down the nephew of Hereric and his victorious nation, then came the broad kingdom into Beowulf's hands. He held it well for 50 winters. He was then a wise king. 2200 to 2209. 9 lines go from Beowulf just being Beowulf to having ruled for 50 years. Just boom! And in the manuscript, it's kind of interesting because the page that this occurs on has evidently been erased and another text written on it. Not literally erased, but the letters scraped off the vellum and another text written over it. and that other text is this part, okay? So, Helak's dead. His son is dead. We're going to find out how he became dead in the remaining lines. And Beowulf is now king. He's been king for 50 years. Okay?
Until
He was then a wise king, old guardian of his homeland, until in the dark nights a dragon began his reign, who guarded his hoard in the high heaths and the steep stone barrows. The path below lay unknown to men. And this is where the manuscript is, quote unquote, damaged, because some of the letters that were overwritten on the page fell off. One of the scholars who's looked at this page much and has written an awful lot about this suggests that the manuscript was overwritten when the vellum was still a little bit wet, because the manuscript was, the letters were scraped off and then it was scrubbed with water, okay? But not all the imprint of the letters, if you want, or the ink that bled into the vellum washed off, okay? But some of the letters that were overwritten fell off because they didn't bind to the vellum, okay? So there's gaps, there's pieces missing. So what we find out in this passage from about 22:14 to 22:25 is somebody, apparently a slave, sneaks into the dragon's barrow and steals a cup. Yes, that is the source for Tolkien's The Hobbit. It's Bilbo Baggins stealing the cup from Smaug. But he got no profit there. The whole nation knew, all the people round about knew what? That he, the dragon, was enraged.
because it started burning down the countryside.
Because the dragon came out to find out who stole its cup. See, dragons are like accountants. They know every little bit of their hoard. You take the smallest thing, and they're going to get really angry and come out and torch the whole countryside. So, we find out there's a lot of treasure in that barrow. 22:33, for in ancient days an unknown man had thought to hide them carefully there. The rich legacy of a noble race, precious treasures. In earlier times, death had seized them all. Them all, the noble race of people, who one person put all their treasure in the ground after they all died. And he who still survived, alone from that nation's army, lingered there a mournful sentry, expected the same. The same to die. This is the beginning of what's called the Lay of the Last Survivor. Right? You could almost, I'm not saying you should, but you could almost read the Lay of the Last Survivor as being something spoken by the speaker of the Wanderer, because they're eerily similar. So, this last survivor puts all the wealth of his race of people in the ground, in a barrow. Okay, what's a barrow look like?
Big hill.
Like this. Go to England, take a study abroad course, go to England, go to Stonehenge. Look at the pretty rocks, okay, over there, and then turn your back to the pretty rocks and walk around Stonehenge. And you will see at almost every degree point of the compass a burial mound. See, the plains of Wiltshire, they held some significance for the people who built Stonehenge. Okay? It's the whole thing for an area like 20 square miles is one massive burial ground. All right? And so there are these mounds, literally, all over England. Okay? And they're burial mounds. People 3,500, 4,500, 5,500 years ago would put a body in here and cover it up with dirt. Okay? If you go to the Sutton Hoo site, bunch of burial mounds. One of them, as I said before, was a burial of a big old ship, 90 feet long. Each of the other mounds also was a burial mound for somebody. All right? So, he finds this burial mound. he stuffs it full of his race's treasure. And as he stuffs it, he says this speech, 22:47. Hold now, O thou earth, for heroes cannot the wealth of men. Lo, from you long ago those good ones first obtained it. So, those good ones a long time ago first took all this wealth out of the earth. What's the wealth? Gold, silver, gems, etc. And because those heroes can no longer hold on to it, it should go back into the earth. Death in war and awful deadly harm have swept away all of my people who have passed from life and left the joyful hall. Now have I none to bear the sword or burnish the bright cup, the precious vessel. All that host has fled. That's kind of like the Ubi Sunt motif in The Wanderer. Where is the rider? Where is the horse? Where is the nobleman? Where is the bright cup? Well, they're in the ground. Now must the hardened helm of hammered gold be stripped of all its trim. The steward sleep who should have tended to this battle mask. So too this warrior's coat, which waited once the bite of iron over the crack of boards, molders like its owner. The coat of mail cannot travel widely with the war chief beside the heroes. Harp joy have I none. Why?
The harp player is dead.
The harp player is dead, and the harp, which is made of wood, rots. It rots. It corrupts. Nor does the well-schooled hawk soar high throughout the hall. Why? There is no hall. The hall is gone. The only thing this guy has left is the treasure he's put into a grave. Savage butchery has sent forth many of the race of men. The heroes. Now notice what he's saying here. What do you get to take with you? Nothing. What does being a hero get you?
Nothing.
6 feet of land. So grieving he mourned his sorrow, alone after all, unhappy sped both days and nights, until the flood of death broke upon his heart. He sat on the treasure, and finally he died of a broken heart. An old beast of the dawn found that shining hoard standing open. That is, not open as in somebody came and cut the, that's weird, stop that. Came in and cut the top off, but opened in the sense that we're going to be told this barrow has an opening. Has an arch opening. Okay? And the dragon finds it. And dragons are designed to find treasure hoards that they then claim as their own. Notice, it is his nature to find a hoard in the earth. That is what a dragon is for, to find treasure. Okay? Like a giant winged, fire-breathing metal detector. It is his nature to find a hoard in the earth where ancient and proud he guards heathen gold, though it does him no good. Why does it do the dragon no good?
Like, all he does is, like, sleep on it and, like, prevent other people from taking it.
Okay. The dragon might think it does him good, helps him sleep better or something.
Doesn't fully satisfy.
Doesn't fully satisfy. What does the dragon do with the gold?
Nothing.
Nothing. See, the poet is implying, as we heard in The Wanderer, in The Seafarer, in The Wanderer we hear, though a brother strew his brother's grave with gold, that gold will what? Not do the dead person any good, because you can't take it to heaven. Or hell. You can't take it with you. Okay? And throughout Old English literature, there is this idea that gold, or if you want, money, has one purpose: to be used. Not simply to be used for yourself, however. It is tied with alms. It's to be given. See, what's the mark of a good king? What does a good king do?
Distribute treasure.
Distributes treasure, gives away treasure. The bad king, the model is Haramode, who does what? Takes treasure and keeps it for himself. He doesn't distribute. He hoards. He's a human dragon. In fact, one Anglo-Saxon scholar came up with a theory about this dragon that I think he's the only one who accepts. Wrote a big, long, thick book about it. He's dead now. His name was Raymond Tripp, where he argues that the dragon is actually the last survivor. That the last survivor, the guy who put all the gold on the ground, finally went to sleep on the hoard, died, and woke up the next morning as the dragon. Okay? And one of his reasons for arguing that is we have an example of that in Norse literature.
Fafnir.
Fafnir the dragon did the exact same thing. And if you've read C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia, you see that same idea with the character of Eustace Scrubb in The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Okay? So, 300 winters the dragon sleeps on the treasure. So the treasure's been there at least 300 years. Actually, we're going to be told later on, the treasure lay there open, that is, with this open, for 700 years before the dragon came. So the last survivor lived 1,000 years before Beowulf. Kind of interesting because, Beowulf was written in the manuscript we have about 1,000 years ago. So, until one man made him boil with fury, the guy who stole the cup. And what happens? The thief bore to his liege lord the plated cup, begged for peace from his lord. In other words, he's trying to buy off his freedom. Then the hoard was looted, the hoard of rings fewer, a favor was granted the forlorn man. He got his freedom. For the first time, his lord looked on that ancient work of men. That is, his lord had never seen that cup before. And then the dragon stirred, or when the dragon stirred, strife was renewed. Because what did the dragon do? It slithered among the stones, it came out, and it found little footprints. But the footprints ended after a while, and we're told, 2291, thus can an undoomed man easily survive rack and ruin if he holds to the ruler's grace and protection. The hoard guardian searched along the ground, greedy to find the man who had sorely harmed him while he slept. Hot, half mad, he kept circling his cave all around the outside, but no one was there in that wilderness to welcome his warfare in the business of battle, so he went back to his barrow. He soon discovered some man had disturbed his gold, his great wealth. He waited impatiently until evening came. And then what? Swollen with rage, take this image, now look down at it from the top. There's the top of the barrel. The dragon comes out, and I don't think he comes out and raids the countryside like a Roomba vacuum cleaner does, which goes bing, 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 like a pinball. I think the dragon's pretty methodical, and he does this. He just makes wider and wider circles until he thinks, okay, I probably got him. And then he goes back to bed. He literally goes back to the barrow, probably like your dog, walks 2 or 3 times around the hoard, gets comfortable, and goes back to sleep. And we're told, Fit 33, the hostile flyer would leave nothing alive. The worm's warfare was widely seen. News was brought to Beowulf. 23:24. To Beowulf the news was quickly brought of that horror that his own home, the best of buildings, had burned in waves of fire, the gift throne of the Geats. Now, obviously, Beowulf must not have been home when that happened. He must have been elsewhere. To the good man that was painful in spirit, greatest of sorrows, the wise one believed he had bitterly offended the ruler of all, the eternal Lord, against the old law. Notice the difference between what Beowulf thinks when the dragon comes and destroys the area and what Hrothgar thought. Because we're never told. Hrothgar immediately thought, how did I offend God? Beowulf thinks, I offended God. Why? Why would that be his first reaction?
Because if God liked him, this wouldn't have happened to him, right?
Yeah, according to some forms of theology, if God likes you, everything's going to go happy for you. You're going to be healthy, wealthy, and wise, and die, happy old age. Not according to the most writers in the early church and such. He thought he bitterly offended the ruler of all, the eternal Lord, against the old law. His breast within groaned with dark thoughts. That was not his custom. That is not natural for Beowulf. To think, what did I do? What's another way of saying what Beowulf's thinking? Why me? But he doesn't ask why me. He asks, what did I do? It's not, the why me is for those who, I didn't do anything wrong. That's Hrothgar's reply. Why me? Okay? But, does Beowulf then sit down and start to moan? Like Hrothgar did?
Nope.
For 12 years. No, he doesn't. Notice, by the way, the dragon comes when?
At night.
And after Beowulf has ruled for 50 years. Grendel came when?
At night.
And after Hrothgar ruled for 50 years. Hrothgar gave his homily and said what? Don't give in to pride, Beowulf. Don't be like I was. Remember the story he told? A person is given a little bit of land. He's given control over lives and people. And he starts to think, I'm young. I'll never die. His conscience falls asleep. And the slayer of souls does what? Bing! Fires the fiery dart beneath the protector, the helmet, or the helm. And he starts to think, I'll never die. It's all mine. Well, Beowulf thinking, what have I done, shows maybe his conscience isn't asleep. So, what does he do? He orders his men to make me a shield. Not just any shield, a wondrous war shield, covered with iron. See, the typical Anglo-Saxon or Germanic shield wasn't covered with iron. The shield was either wood or wood in multiple layers of oxhide. Because oxhide, multiple layers of it, you bundle it all up so you get a half-inch or inch thick, it would repel arrows. They'd bounce off. Wood and oxide, if it's wood's on the outside, it would stick. It wouldn't go through. It wouldn't penetrate. He's getting a metal one made. Why?
Dragonfire.
Tends to not do well with wood. So, we're told, the long good nobleman, 2341, had to endure the end of his lone days, this world's life. Now, we are only at line 2341. There are 3,182 lines in this poem. We've got approximately 700, 800 lines to go. Almost a third of the poem. And the poet has just told us what? Beowulf's going to die. So suspense isn't really a thing for the Anglo-Saxons. He understood well that he would have to what? Give up his lone life.
And so did the worm.
And so did the worm. They're both going to die. Okay? Then that Prince of Rings did what? He scorned to seek out the far-flung flyer with his full force of men. Beowulf isn't going to marshal all of his troops. Nope. He's going to get the select very best. I mean, these are SEAL Team 6. I mean, best of the best. He did not dread that attack, nor did he worry much about the dragon's warfare, strength, or valor. Why? Because I'm Beowulf. I'm a monster killer. He remembered his earlier battles. 23:55. 4. It was not the least of hand-to-hand combats when Hygelac was slain. What? Who cares about Hygelac? We want to see Beowulf go kill the dragon. In the chaos of battle, the king of the Geats, the lord of his people, in the land of the Frisians, the son of Hrethel, this is the second Hygelac Frisian digression. Beowulf escaped from there through his own strength, took a long swim. He had in his arms the battle armor of 30 men when he climbed to the cliffs. Now, one scholar, Fred Robinson, whom Lisa has referred to before, doesn't think that's an accurate translation to say Beowulf had a long swim. Even though the verb that is used is the verb for swim, he suggests that it should be understood to be to row. That he rowed with this armor of 30 men in one arm. So he rowed kind of like this. Okay? But he's doing that because he wants to demarvelize Beowulf. Because to say Beowulf swam means he swam from the northwest, if you're looking at a map, the northwest coast of Europe here, over Denmark, and then down to the land of the Geats. We're talking several hundred miles that he's swimming one-handed because he's carrying the suits of armor of 30 men in his other arm. Now, don't think suit of armor, the big plate metal. Think like a ringmail coat. But still, go to England, go to one of the national, trust houses, or go to the Tower of London. Try on a ring mail shirt. Weighs about 30 or 40 pounds. And then jump in the water and try and swim. Okay? This is telling us Beowulf's not like you and I. So, he escapes with the armor of 30 men. By no means did the Hetwer need to exult in that fight. That is, the people that the Frisians fought alongside the Frisians against Beowulf's men. When they marched on foot to him, bore their linden shields, few came back from that brave shoulder. Few. 0. Beowulf was the sole survivor of this battle. All the Geatish men that went on this battle, except for Beowulf, died. Hygelac died. And we find out later, how did Beowulf kill Hygelac's killer? Not with a sword. He crushed him to death with a bear hug, or a Beowulf hug, if you want. So the son of Ecgtheow crossed the vast sea. He returned to the people, and Hygd offered him the hoard in the kingdom. Well, the hoard means the treasure. The kingdom means you get to be king. What comes with the kingship when the previous king dies and there's a queen? Yeah, the queen comes with that. So she essentially said, Beowulf, I'm yours. He says no. Why? She has a son. He should be king. But he's a child. So Beowulf essentially says, put Hardred up in the big chair, and I'll just stand behind him and flex my muscles, and everybody will go, Hardred, Beowulf, okay, we're going to stay away. But despite their misery, by no means could they prevail upon the prince at all that he should become lord over Hardred, etc. No, he upheld him, Beowulf upheld Hardred, 2377, in the folk with friendly counsel. In wretched exiles come the sons of Ohtera. These two. Okay? So let's get rid of this and this. Okay? So why do Anmund and Eadil, so let's get rid of this over here, come to, now we're over at the Geats. These are Swedes slash Skilvings, not Skildings, Skilvings, another word for the Swedes. So you have Geats, and now Hardred is king. Okay? He's son of Helak. So, these two come over to him for refuge, for protection. Why?
Because Orella comes. No, Orella's husband.
Okay, what happened to Onyenthal?
Dead.
Helak killed him. Remember when we were first introduced to Helak on Beowulf's return, he was called the Slayer of Onyenthal. Fourfold Germanic ethic. Duty to Lord, duty to kin, duty to avenge one's lord and kin. Okay? So, he killed Onyenthal. It's now their duty to kill Helak. But Helak dies in the Frisian raid. Okay, so that then goes against his son. Here's the problem. The reason these two are exiles, he's the oldest brother. He dies, he becomes king. Yeah, but not when you have Scar living in your midst. You know, he wants to be king, and apparently he offs his brother. Now, what else does that mean? If he should be king and he dies, then who should be king after him? Eldest son. That's why they leave. Uncle Onela has usurped the kingship. And, apparently, become a kinslayer in the process. So, they sought him out across the seas. They had rebelled against the Sylvings' ruler, Onela, the best of all sea kings. See, it's not implied he dies of a natural death. And we know from other sources he doesn't die of a natural death. His brother kills him. Okay? And yet the poet says, Onela is the best of all sea kings. Well, sea kings implies not just the Swedes. Danes, Geats, they're sea kings also. I mean, what did Shildsheving do? He made the people from the surrounding coasts fear him. That's not the coast of his island. That's the coasts on the lands fronting his island. So, the best of all sea kings who dispensed treasure in the Swedish lands, a famous king. That cost him his life. That cost who? Whose life? Hardred. Hardred gave sanctuary to Anlund and Eadgils. So, Onela does what? He attacks. He attacks the Geats. Okay? He has a man working for him, not related to Onela. He's like a hired gun, mercenary, named Weston. Okay? And Weston is with Onela when they attack. So let me back up a little bit. 2379. Wretched exiles, the sons of Otra, sought him out across the seas. They had rebelled. That cost him his life. For his hospitality, he took a mortal hurt with the stroke of a sword, that son of Helak. And the son of Onyenthal, Onela, afterwards went to seek out his home once Hardred lay dead. 2389, which I think is the most difficult line in the entire poem. I'll explain why in a moment. And let Beowulf hold the high throne and rule the gates. That was a good king. That's the third time. That was gold king. Okay? The Old English verb there for line 2389. Second word. Let. The Old English verb is let. What does let mean?
Allowed.
Allowed. So if you allow somebody to do something, what does that say about the power relationship? The person allowing is the one in power over the other one. And he let Beowulf hold the high throne. Onela had the greater power over Beowulf? How so? 30-30. Bring it on, buddy. That's why it's the most difficult line in the entire poem. Because it plays with, I'll use that term, it plays with our understanding of Beowulf. Fourfold Germanic ethic. What is Hardred to Beowulf?
His
Nope. He's cousin, okay. What else? Louder. He's his king. Duty to lord, duty to family, duty to avenge one's lord and family. Onela attacks. Hardred is killed. What should Beowulf do?
Murder.
Should kill Onela. And or the person who actually killed Hardred, if it wasn't Onela himself. And instead, Onela goes back to his home and let Beowulf hold the throne. Let implies Onela has the power to appoint the king. And goes, you. Doesn't that not fit the Germanic ethic? Shouldn't Beowulf not let Onela go back home? Because usually the vengeance thing is quick. It's immediate.
What happened to Edmund
We're going to get to them in a moment. Okay?
and weren't they guests?
Yeah, they were guests of Hardred. That's why Onela attacks. Okay? He is killed. So they're over here now, let's say. Anmund and Eengils. So they're over here being protected. Onela attacks. Weston kills Anmund. This is important for the end of the poem. Okay? Onela eventually dies. So who becomes king of the Swedes? Eengils. Weston has a son. It's going to come up in the next 1,000 lines. That son's name is Beowulf. Yeah, I'm seeing a couple of faces go, oh, you're starting to see it. Who's Beowulf? He's the guy who saves Beowulf's bacon in the fight against the dragon. He is Beowulf's sole survivor. He's the last member of Beowulf's family, of Beowulf's lineal kin. Okay? Why? They're both Waymundings. Weston is a Waymunding. Beowulf is a Waymunding. It's like an offshoot tribe of the Watergates. Think of it as a subset. Okay? So, that was a good king. Who's the that referred to? Is it Beowulf or is it Onela? Some critics have said Onela. Some of us think it's talking about Beowulf. But if it's Beowulf, or some critics think it's Beowulf, should have said us. If it's Beowulf, is it meant ironically? Because he doesn't kill Onela. Not then, at least. See, I think it refers to Onela. That's a good king how? He put Beowulf in his place. He's showing mastery over Beowulf. All right? When I first raised this kind of theory, again, like I did another thing back in the 90s, I mean, again, you'd think I was saying Beowulf was a cross-dresser because the Anglo-Saxon scholars just came out of the woodwork. They were like, this is crazy. There is no way. Since then, a few people have come out and essentially said the same thing. So, in later days, he did not forget that prince's fall. Who's the he? Beowulf. What does later days mean? It's not like next week. It's like years later. Years later, Beowulf did not forget that prince's fall. What prince's fall? Hardred's. The poet's telling us, oh, Beowulf got his vengeance. He paid back Onla. He befriended ENGL, the wretched exile. Across the open sea, he gave support to the son of Otra. Why only him? Because he died. So he supported ENGL in what? His battle against his uncle. Notice, Beowulf did not kill Onla.
But he supported the guy who did.
But he supported the guy who did. Here's why I think Beowulf doesn't do it himself. Who's got the greater claim on Onula's life?
Adios.
Why?
Because Onula killed his father, right?
Because Onula killed his father. Onula is responsible for the death of his brother. Beowulf's only claim against Onula is he killed his king. I shouldn't say only. That's pretty big. That ranks pretty high. And his cousin. But brother and father, those are a whole lot closer. Both of whom were also king to be. And so the son of ENGL had survived every struggle, every terrible onslaught, with brave deeds until that one day when he had to take his hand against the spirit. Until says, but not that day. He is not going to survive that one. So what does he do? He takes 12 men. That is literally 1 of 12. Beowulf, Beowulf, and 10 others, plus one more, go to the barrow. Who's the one other?
The slave?
The slave. The guy who stole the cup. He knows where it is. If you've ever seen the film, I don't recommend. Book's a lot better. 13th Warrior by Michael Crichton. Okay? Which is a retelling of kind of this passage of Beowulf. Crichton was talking with somebody, and this person said, they were talking about Beowulf, and this person said, man, I remember to read that in college. It was so horrible. And Crichton's like, no, it's a great story. So he kind of rewrote it. It then gets made into a film with Antonio Banderas, okay? And the 13th Warrior refers to the slave who leads them to the barrow. So Beowulf, Beowulf, 10 warriors, and then the 13th man. Notice the numbers, by the way. Take the 13th man out for a moment. Beowulf and... Yeah, well, I guess you can include the 13th man as, the 12th of his followers, so to speak. So they go and talk about the 13th man being the thief, etc. They make their way to where the Earth Hall stood, 2410. It was full of gems and metal bands. A monstrous guardian, eager for combat, kept his gold treasures ancient under the ground. They make their way to the cape. Notice, so it's not just any old barrow. It's a barrow sitting on a cliff, kind of overlooking the ocean. Out of the barrow is a stream. And it's implied that the stream flows over the ocean. People have looked for this, by the way. For the last 150 years, they tried to find what location in Scandinavia matches Hronesnessa, which is what it's called. The Whale's Cape. Anyways.
Have they found it yet?
No, Beowulf gets there, and he sits down. Why?
He's old.
He's old. Do we know how old?
At least 80.
At least 80? Maybe 100, depending on how old he is in the earlier part of the poem. He sits down, wishes good health to his hearth companions. His heart was grieving, ripe for death. Doom was immeasurably near. And he speaks. Why does he speak? And what does he say? In my youth. In other words, he's going to relive his glory days. I survived many storms of battle, times of strife. Still remember them all. I was 7 years old when the Prince of Treasures took me from my father. Who's the Prince of Treasures? It's not Hrothgar. It's Hrethel. The king held me and kept me, gave me gems and feasts. I never thought about this before. Does that imply then that Beowulf had to have known Hrothgar, or Hrothgar had to have known Beowulf before he was 7 years old? Because from age 7 on, he's raised by his grandfather. I think it does. And I think the reason he takes him from his father is because where's his father living? Not with the Watergates. He's living with the Danes. Okay? When you foster a child out, you foster them among your own people. To not do that would be like, a member of the NAACP fostering his child out to a member of the KKK. It just wouldn't work. So he says, Hrethel the king held me, kept me, gave me gems, etc., etc. And what does he do? He tells us a story. What's the story? He tells us the story of Hrethel's eldest sons. So here we have Hrethel. You remember these are Geats. He had 4 children. Heribald, Hathkin, Hygelac, unnamed daughter. Unnamed daughter is the one who marries Ecgtheow. Okay? Because notice we went almost immediately to Hygelac becoming king. So what happened between these two?
They probably died.
How? Say that again?
They probably died.
How? This one accidentally kills this one. Okay? Hathkin accidentally kills Heribald. Here's the kicker about these two. Look at this name and this name. The Bald and the Hath. In Old Norse, there is a tale of one brother killing the other brother. This one in Old Norse, his name is Baldur. This one in Old Norse, his name is Huther. Okay? Bald, Hath. These two parts of these names correspond exactly with these two forms in Old Norse. These two in Old Norse, these are gods. Baldur, it's his death that causes, anybody know? Ragnarok. Okay. In the Old Norse myth, Loki tricks Huther and Baldur, tricks the other gods into, let's, shoot stuff at Baldur. Baldur has this protection about him. He can't be killed.
Except by mistletoe.
He can, but by mistletoe. So they're essentially using Baldur as a target. And they're shooting arrows and spears and everything at him, and they bing, 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 fall off. And it's all fun and games until, you get your eye put out, right? Well, kind of literally, this is what happens. Because Huther is given a mistletoe-tipped arrow. And he hits his brother. His brother dies. Loki leaves. Fenris Ulf is unchained. The Jörmungard, the snake that entwines the world, is set loose. Ragnarok comes. The gods, humans, good guys lose, bad guys win. Turn off the lights. Okay? So this is the story. But Beowulf tells us a humanized version of it. So, Hathkin accidentally kills Heribald. Germanic ethic. What then becomes incumbent upon Hrethel? You have to duty to avenge
Your kin.
your kin. So, he's got to avenge his death. How? Kill the son that killed him? Well, that won't work. Because then what does he become?
You can exile, though.
Yeah, but that doesn't meet the penalty. Can he demand weregild? Mangold? Here, son, let me give you a check. Now give it back. That doesn't equal justice. Hrethel is what? Royally. What's the next word? Screwed. This one episode, I think the poet includes to tell us ultimately one thing. That Germanic ethic, it doesn't work. You take it to its logical conclusions, it doesn't work. Kind of like what Coifi the priest said to Edwin the king. If our religion worked, I'd be, walking around richest man in the world, and everything would be going hunky-dory for me. And as it is, life sucks. It doesn't work. Okay? Because what happens to Hrethel? Beowulf continues the story. And he says, one brother kills another brother. What does the father do eventually? Dies of a broken heart. Why? He's lost him. He loves him, and yet he doesn't love him. And he can't get the vengeance that he needs. So he dies of a broken heart. 24:44. It was as sad as if an old man should live to see his young son ride on the gallows. Let him recount a story, blah, blah, blah. Each and every morning calls to mind his son's passing away. He will not care to wait for any other heir or offspring when the first one has tasted evil deeds and fell death. He looks sorrowfully on his son's dwelling. Why? Because no other children are going to come from there. He takes to his couch, keens a lament, all alone for his lost one. All too vast to him seem the fields and townships. Thus, therefore, the protector of the waiters bore surging in his breast heartfelt sorrows for Heribald. He couldn't make amends for the feud with his murderer, but neither could he hate that warrior for his hostile deeds. He couldn't hate him, but he also couldn't make amends. So what did he do? 24:69. He gave up man's joys, chose God's light. Your gloss. He died. Really. But that's not a Germanic expression, he chose God's light. That's a Christian expression. He left to his children his land and strongholds. What children? Because, he's gone. These three. Okay? Then there was strife between Swedes engaged, quarrel in common across the wide water, hard hostility after Hrethel died, until the sons of Onyenthal, these two, were bold and warlike, wanted no peace. That battle was fatal to Halfkin. He gets killed. Well, why? Who started the battle? Halfkin. What did he do? He attacked the Swedes, we are told, and where is it? It comes up later, actually. He attacked Onyenthal, and we're told he bereft Onyenthal's wife of her gold. He stole Onyenthal's wife's treasure. Now, some people read that literally to be he took her treasure, like Wealthy Out has her own treasure hoard. Some of them, like me, read it more metaphorically. He raped her. Okay. That really angers husbands, So Onyenthal attacks, and Halfkin dies. Helak becomes king. All right? He had no need to, let's see here. Beowulf goes on, I'm going to skip a bunch. He talks about Dayraven, the champion of the Hugas, Frankish tribes allied to the Frisians. Dayraven, it is assumed, is the person who killed Helak. Okay. 25:10. Beowulf spoke again. He hasn't stopped, right? And he says, I've survived many battles in my youth. I will yet, an old folk guardian, seek out a feud and do a glorious deed, if only that evildoer will come out to me from its earth hall. I'll fight the dragon if he comes out. I'm not going to fight him inside the barrow.
Because that's his home.
That's his home. That's his turf. He doesn't want to get him home field advantage, that kind of thing. Okay? So he salutes his comrades. Says, I'd fight him like I did Grendel, if I knew any other way, like I did with Grendel. But he says, 25:24, from the horde's warden I will not flee a single foot, but for us it shall be at the wall as weird decrees. At the wall, at the entrance to the battle. God, no, not God. Weird will decide. Why doesn't he say God? All of his previous battles, he said God decided it.
Because maybe God's not on his side this time.
Maybe God's not on his side this time. Maybe he's going full bore pagan. But he's already full bore pagan. Keep that in mind. Okay? So,
He expects to die.
is weird decrees the ruler of every man. It shall be at the wall as what will be decrees. In other words, I'm going to go off and fight this thing, and what will be, will be. My mind is firm. I will forego boasting about this flying foe. So, you guys wait here. I already said, these men are Beowulf's choicest warriors. Describe his kingship, however, for 50 years.
Peaceful.
Peaceful. So how well versed in the arts of war are these guys?
Probably don't have much experience.
They don't have any experience. They don't have any experience. He has had a peaceful reign for 50 years. He's going to talk, we're going to hear a little bit more about it in a moment. Okay? So he says, this battle isn't yours. You stay here. What has he just given them? It's an order. Good Germanic fashion, you do what your Lord says. But Germanic ethic says also, you have a duty to your Lord. And if your Lord's getting his you-know-what whooped, it's your duty to step in, which was why in the Dream of the Rood said, oh man, I could take them all out. But I had to obey. So, he stands up by his shield, stern under a helmet. He goes under the stone cliffs, 25:40. He saw then by the wall he had survived a great many conflicts, good and manly virtues, etc., etc. Stone arches standing. The entrance to the barrow has arches like that. What does that tell us?
Roman.
It's Roman. This is a Roman burial mound. This is not an ancient Celtic burial mound.
Because they're made of wood.
No, they weren't made of wood. They were made like Stonehenge. Two posts, lintel on top. The Romans were the ones who came up with arches. Okay? This is telling us the burial mound, the only kind that the poet is familiar with, possibly, is this kind. That might be a little indication that the poem isn't or doesn't date from 600 Scandinavia. Okay? That it's based upon a locale, let's say, in England, that the poet is familiar with having seen this thing, just like the poet apparently has seen a stone-paved road, which you would never see in Denmark. So Beowulf goes up to the stone arches, and he, 25:51, let a word burst forth from his breast. We don't know what word, but he shouts. He yells something at the dragon. You dirty, rotten, scummy, slimy, slithery whatever. And we're told the Horde Warden, 2554, recognized the voice of a man. Now that can mean he heard the sound and said, not dragon. Could also mean, did he just call me what I think he called me? Did he just say, I'm a dirty, rotten, no good son of a... And so the dragon comes out. Okay? And the dragon comes out.
There was no time to sue for peace.
Yeah, no time, flamethrower. Beowulf raises his hand. And they have kind of two clashes. 2591. It was not long until those two great creatures came together again. Two great creatures. In Old English, you got the footnote there. Aglacan. Okay? It's a very interesting word. The singular is aglaca. Because how you translate that determines how you interpret it. One of the most famous editors of the poem, a guy named Friedrich Kleber, in his original edition and up through the third edition of his translation, he would translate that word variously depending upon who it referred to. So when it refers to Beowulf, he would call it warrior, fierce combatant. When it referred to Grendel or the dragon, he would translate it monster. But it's the same word.
So what exactly does Aglaca mean?
It's a good question.
Don't know.
It's not don't know. So in the fourth edition of Kleber's Beowulf, which Kleber had nothing to do, he was dead for 50 years. It's modern editors who took the title. They give fierce combatant, warrior, adversary, monster in the glossary. And then they kind of tell you in which usage, which one of those it should be. And in some of them, they do like what Liuza has here. What's the word? Two great creatures, or two great combatants. And in doing that, they're not interpreting. Again, because how you interpret it, how you translate it, determines your interpretation. Are there aspects of Beowulf, in other words, that are monstrous? Well, yeah, the strength of 60 men. That's monstrous. Killing a man by squeezing him to death. That's monstrous. Okay? He never, except for the dragon, kills anything else. I take that back. Grendel's mother, he uses a sword, but it's not a human sword. It's a giant sword. Okay? By using a giant sword, that's kind of telling us there's something unhuman about Beowulf. Okay? So, Beowulf suffers anguish, he who had once ruled his folk, 2595. His men, meanwhile, are doing what? They're cowering. Okay? Except for one. Fit 36. Beowulf, Weston's son. This Weston, the same Weston who killed Eanmund, Eadgil's brother. Okay? Beowulf helped Eadgils get vengeance on Onela, so Eadgils is now the king of the Swedes. He sees his liege lord. He realizes this isn't good. Go ahead, I'm listening. And we're told it was known among men as the heirloom of Eanmund. That is, what was? The sword and shield he has. The sword and shield that we all have were the heirloom of him. What happened last time we saw the heirloom of one tribe that's being used by another tribe?
They're talking about the old man.
Talking about Freyru among the Heathobards and her retainer. In other words, the feud is renewed. We can cut to the end briefly. I'm going to give away the end, even though we're not going to get there. Beowulf's going to die, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Beowulf dies. Who becomes king after him?
Beowulf.
So Beowulf's king now of the Geats. And he's got Eanmund's heirloom weaponry. What does the messenger at the end of the poem tell us, the audience? He's not telling the people this. Here's how it's going to play out. Once word reaches the Frisians, the Heathobards, the Franks, the Swedes, the Danes, that Beowulf's no longer alive, what's going to happen? All hell will break loose. And where will it break loose from first? Why?
Brothers killers.
His father killed his brother. See, nothing stops the feud. It just keeps going on. Therefore, ENGL is bound by the Germanic custom to seek vengeance against Beowulf. Beowulf had nothing to do with Eanmund's death. Sucks to be you. Too bad. The fact that you're Germanic means, yep, it's your problem now. Okay? That's what the poet's going to build to. So, that's what the big long passage about from 26:10 down to 26:20 or so, that's why that's important. The poet is setting us up to say, Beowulf's got this armor, and he's going to have it after Beowulf dies, and that's going to set up for the sons of Otera, the last remaining one, to get involved. So Beowulf speaks to his companions and says, you know, I remember when we used to drink beer with Beowulf, and we would say, oh yeah, Beowulf, we're with you to the very end, you know. And he'd give us treasure based on that. Go back to the beginning of the poem.
That's what's good killing.
Where the poet says, thus should a good man do, distribute his father's treasure for what purpose? So that in his old age he has men who will stand by him. That's where we are. Beowulf distributed this treasure, and he only has one man who will stand by him. Okay? So, he runs in, goes up to Beowulf, 26:63. Dear Beowulf, do all well, as in your youth you said you would, that you would never let in your whole life your fame decline. What's the purpose of this speech? He goes up behind Beowulf, whispers into his ear, come on, man, you're Beowulf. You used to eat dragons for breakfast when you were a kid. Suck it up.
I got you, Holmes.
It's 4th and 10. You got to win. And Beowulf's like, oh yeah, I forgot who I was for a moment. The worm comes back. What kind of shield does Beowulf have?
Wood.
Wood. He's toast. Okay? Beowulf, after Beowulf encourages him, goes for what kind of hit? If you ever saw the film Signs, there's a famous phrase in it. Swing, Meryl, swing. About the character, Joaquin Phoenix's character. Beowulf goes for the grand slam, Homer. Where's he aiming for? The noggin. He wants to decapitate this dragon. Why? That's where all the danger comes from. Big old fangs, fiery breath. He swings his sword, named Niling, son of nails. That's a pretty good name for a sword. And what does it do? It shatters. Why? He's too strong. And the dragon gets a little angry and bites him in the neck. Now there are some medieval texts that talk about wounds to the neck are symbolic of pride. Okay? Symbolic of pride. So what does Beowulf do the last 2 minutes? Beowulf stabs the dragon, but where? Yeah, he goes a little lower. He's like, big fangs fired, not going to do that. He hits the dragon, we're told, somewhere in the belly, so that 2700. His sword plunged in, bejeweled and bloody, so that the fire began to subside afterwards. I know nothing about dragon anatomy, but apparently he put out the pilot light. Apparently the dragon somewhere has got a light that always burns. And then the fumes, the noxious, whatever, the fuel for the fire comes from behind that, and he puts it out. So the dragon's going, and nothing. And that's when Beowulf kills the dragon. And how does he kill it? He drew the war dagger, 2703, bitter and battle sharp, and he carved through the worm's midsection. Now, the way I interpret the Old English here is that he cuts this sucker in half. He doesn't just, he literally cuts the dragon in two. Because keep in mind, this dragon is not necessarily like our modern conception of a dragon. If you saw Reign of Fire with Christian Bale and Woody Harrelson, I think it was, film from about 10, 15 years ago, about dragons coming and being awakened in London because of roadworks and stuff. Those are the big, massive dragons, giant wings, tails, big bodies. A lot of dragons in medieval literature are essentially snakes with wings.
Oh.
Snakes, long, slithery things with wings. That's it. So it's kind of easy to cut them in two.
So basically, there's no legs.
It's about a man-sized
Some of them, I mean, think of a blue skink, if you're familiar with skinks. They can grow about this long, okay?
Yeah.
Long and slender, little short legs. So like T-Rex legs on a giant lizard or a giant snake. Little short legs, okay? We're out of time. We'll finish this on Thursday. Maybe let's plan for a quiz over from where we did the last one to the end. And I've got to try to figure out how we're going to get relatively caught up, because we are so far behind.